We live in a world where we talk a lot about what men want before sex. We hear it in movies, in locker rooms, in music, but hardly anyone talks about what men really need after sex. And that silence is costing us deeper connection, real intimacy, and sometimes even relationships. See, sex isn't just a physical act. For many men, it's the one time they let their guard down, where they feel open, vulnerable, and emotionally raw, even if they don't know how to express it. But what happens right after can either make a man feel seen or completely misunderstood. After sex, many people assume that the experience has fulfilled all emotional needs, particularly for men. Society has conditioned us to believe that men are primarily driven by physical desires, that once those needs are met, there is little else required. But this is a misconception, one that leaves many men feeling emotionally neglected in a moment when they're actually at their most open. Emotional aftercare is the unseen layer of intimacy that allows the physical act of sex to transform into a meaningful connection. For a lot of men, sex is not just about the release, it's about feeling wanted, appreciated, and close to someone in a way that words often fail to capture. Men are rarely given spaces in life where they can feel emotionally safe. From a young age, they're taught to be tough, stoic, in control. But during and especially after sex, those defenses drop. In those quiet, tender moments, men are often at their most emotionally available. Yet, this is precisely when many women assume the experience is over and shift their focus away, not out of malice, but out of a misunderstanding of male emotional needs. Emotional aftercare doesn't have to be complicated or dramatic. It's the simple gestures, a touch, a few words, a moment of stillness. It's a woman choosing to stay present instead of rolling away or reaching for her phone. It's choosing to be emotionally engaged instead of treating the act as finished. These moments speak volumes to a man who, for perhaps one of the few times in his day, doesn't have to perform or lead or fix. He can just be. When emotional aftercare is missing, many men experience an internal disconnection they can't even name. They may feel a sudden emotional drop or a subtle shift in how secure they feel in the relationship. They might pull away, seem distant, or close themselves off in future interactions. It's not because the sex wasn't good, it's because the emotional space that followed felt cold or incomplete. A man might not say this outright, in fact, most won't. But the impact is real and it affects the overall intimacy of the relationship in ways that build up over time. On the flip side, when a woman recognizes this need and steps into that emotional space, it creates something rare and powerful, a moment that says, "You're safe here, you're still seen." That kind of emotional safety isn't just comforting, it's magnetic. It's what makes a man want to stay close, to open up more, to invest, because it's no longer just about sex. It's about being understood in a world that rarely asks how he feels when his guard is down. After sex, many men experience a moment of emotional vulnerability that often goes unnoticed. This is the moment where validation and reassurance can play a vital role. Contrary to the stereotype that men are emotionally indifferent or detached after intimacy, many of them are quietly questioning, did I make her feel good? Was I enough? Does she still feel close to me? These questions are not spoken out loud, but they exist in the silence after the act. The problem is that most women are not taught that men also crave emotional affirmation just as deeply as they do, especially in the moments when they're most exposed. Validation doesn't mean inflating his ego or offering exaggerated praise. It means letting him know in simple and genuine ways that he mattered in that moment. A few kind words like "that felt really good" or "I love being close to you like this" can have an effect far greater than women realize. It's not about being performative, it's about acknowledging his presence, his effort, and his emotional significance in that space. This kind of reassurance tells a man that the experience was more than physical. It meant something, and so did he. When a man feels validated after sex, it sends a powerful signal that he is emotionally safe in the relationship. It's a subtle but crucial message that he is enough and that the bond between him and his partner has not weakened in the vulnerable aftermath of intimacy. Without this validation, some men may begin to doubt their emotional role in the relationship. They might interpret silence or emotional distance as disappointment or disconnection, even if that wasn't the woman's intention at all. Reassurance after sex also helps to create emotional consistency, which is deeply important for trust. When a man knows that his partner will remain emotionally open and accepting after intimacy, he's far more likely to open up in return. Over time, this builds a cycle of mutual vulnerability that strengthens the relationship. Without that, emotional distance can start to creep in, even if the physical connection remains strong. There's also a deeper layer to all of this. Many men are used to being wanted for what they can do, what they can provide, solve, or perform. But few feel consistently wanted for who they are. When a woman validates a man after sex, it tells him, "You're not just here to perform a role. You're someone I genuinely desire, appreciate, and feel safe with." That kind of validation is incredibly grounding for a man. It gives him the freedom to let go of the pressures of being strong or in control and just be present. Reassurance also works as a bridge between the physical and emotional. It softens the transition from intense closeness to everyday reality. It helps men stay emotionally connected rather than shutting down or compartmentalizing the experience. For most men, vulnerability is not a space they are often invited into. From childhood, many are conditioned to equate emotional expression with weakness. They're told to man up, to hide their feelings, to be the rock others lean on, but never the one that leans. As a result, many men grow up never fully understanding how to express or even access their emotional needs. Sex, for many of them, becomes one of the few acceptable spaces where vulnerability is allowed to surface, where they can drop their armor without judgment. But that window is brief, and what happens immediately after sex can either honor that rare vulnerability or cause it to shut down completely. Creating space for a man to be vulnerable after sex is not about prying emotions out of him or asking deep probing questions in a tender moment. It's about giving him permission without pressure to simply be. Often it's in the quiet, unspoken energy of the moment that a man will feel whether he's truly accepted. If his partner is open, non-judgmental, and emotionally present, he may begin to let more of himself show. That might mean talking or just staying close or allowing a moment of silence where he doesn't feel the need to perform or explain. The truth is, vulnerability for men often looks different than it does for women. It may not always come with tears or words. It might look like a long pause, a softening in his voice, a subtle need for physical closeness. These are not weaknesses. They are signs of trust. They are signs that in that moment, he feels safe enough to lower the emotional walls he's spent years building. And it's in those moments that true emotional intimacy has the chance to grow. What many women don't realize is that if they rush out of the moment, change the subject, or emotionally disconnect right after sex, it can send an unintentional message that the emotional side of him is not welcome here, that he's desired for the act but not seen for the person. And when this happens repeatedly, men begin to retreat. They may still show up physically, but emotionally they'll start to withdraw. They'll become harder to read, more closed off, less likely to share anything meaningful. It's not because they don't care, it's because they learned it's not safe to care too much. But when a woman holds space for him after sex, when she stays close without demanding, when she listens without fixing, when she simply lets him exist in that moment as he is, she communicates something incredibly powerful. That his vulnerability is not just tolerated, it's respected. This is rare for many men. So rare, in fact, that when they find it, they don't want to let it go. That kind of emotional acceptance doesn't just deepen the bond, it gives him a safe place to return to again and again without fear of being misunderstood or dismissed. After the intensity of sex, It's easy to assume that physical closeness has served its purpose. But what many people overlook is that the moments following sex are not just a cool dope. They're an opportunity to build deeper emotional intimacy through non-sexual affection. While the physical act of sex satisfies desire, it's often the touch, the cuddling, the gentle words, and the stillness afterward that make a man feel genuinely connected. For a man, non-sexual affection after intimacy is not about continuing the arousal. It's about feeling valued for more than what just happened. In many relationships, affection outside of sex starts to decline over time. The hugs, the hand-holding, the resting of a head on a shoulder. These gestures are often replaced by routines, distractions, or unspoken distance. But when affection is maintained, and especially when it's offered immediately after sex, it tells a man something important, that he is wanted, not just for his performance, but for his presence, that he is still held, still desired, still appreciated, even when the physical excitement fades. It creates a sense of comfort and connection that goes far beyond the bedroom. Men often don't verbalize their need for post-sex affection, partly because they've been conditioned not to admit to emotional needs. They may fear that asking for a cuddle or soft words will make them seem needy or unmanly. But internally, many crave that soft, grounding contact that says, "You're still here, and I'm still with you." It's not about being smothered or overly romantic. It's about quiet reassurance through touch. A hand on the chest, a head resting against him, a shared silence when nothing needs to be said. These small, intentional gestures anchor him emotionally. When non-sexual affection is consistently offered after sex, it builds trust. It teaches a man that his partner sees him as more than a body or an outlet for desire. It lets him relax into the emotional bond rather than feeling the need to detach or protect himself once the act is over. This kind of physical closeness allows him to associate sex with emotional safety, not just pleasure. And that shift can change the entire dynamic of a relationship. It leads to deeper communication, more openness, and a greater willingness to show up fully. On the other hand, when affection stops abruptly after sex, when one partner rolls away, checks their phone, or disengages, it can feel jarring. It breaks the emotional rhythm and creates an emotional gap where connection was just formed. Even if the sex was great, the absence of non-sexual affection afterward can make it feel transactional. For men who may already struggle to express vulnerability, this can reinforce the belief that they must stay emotionally guarded. They learn that sex doesn't lead to connection, it leads to isolation. And so they shut down emotionally, not because they want to, but because they feel they have to. What makes non-sexual affection so powerful is its simplicity. It doesn't require effort or performance, it just requires presence. It's in these quiet moments that men often feel the most emotionally fed, not by grand gestures, but by the smallest forms of care that speak directly to the heart. After sex, the emotional landscape between partners becomes especially sensitive. It's a moment when walls have come down and both people, particularly men, are often more receptive to emotional cues than they would be at any other time. This is why post-intimacy communication is so crucial. It's not just about talking. It's about what is said, how it's said, and whether the words spoken serve to bring the couple closer or quietly push them apart. For men, this window after sex is one of the few moments where emotional closeness feels both safe and natural. When a woman takes the opportunity to connect through meaningful, gentle conversation, it helps reinforce a sense of belonging and trust that lasts far beyond the physical act. Many women underestimate how much a few kind words or a shared reflection can matter in that moment. Men are often starved of emotionally validating communication, particularly in moments when they're vulnerable. After sex, a man may not even realize that he wants to talk or connect more deeply, But when his partner initiates a moment of warmth, curiosity, or appreciation, he feels seen in a way that touches him deeper than he's used to. It doesn't have to be a deep or emotional conversation, even a casual check-in like, "How are you feeling?" or a quiet, "I love that moment when," creates a bridge between physical and emotional intimacy. And men often struggle to articulate their feelings, especially if they've grown up in environments where emotional openness was not encouraged. When a woman offers a safe, open space after sex to speak freely, even if just for a few minutes, it gives him permission to open up. It may start with a light comment, a compliment, or a funny story, but those small conversations lay the groundwork for deeper emotional transparency later on. When this becomes a habit, it fosters a sense of emotional predictability and reliability. He starts to associate intimacy with emotional safety, not just physical pleasure. It's also important to recognize that silence in these moments can sometimes be misinterpreted. If communication after sex is consistently absent, men may start to wonder what their partner is thinking or feeling. Did she enjoy it? Is she emotionally checked out? Did something feel off? When these questions go unanswered, it can lead to internal doubt and a quiet distancing that builds over time. On the other hand, when communication flows naturally and gently, it reinforces the idea that the connection is mutual and alive. This kind of post-intimacy communication doesn't require emotional intensity or heavy dialogue. In fact, it's often most powerful when it's calm and natural. It's in the little comments, the curious questions, the affirming words, that men feel reassured and valued. They feel like they're not just participants in a moment, but part of something shared, something emotional. That feeling is what creates lasting closeness. The sense that sex isn't the end of connection, but the beginning of a deeper emotional conversation that's always welcome. Every person has their own emotional rhythm, an internal pace at which they open up, connect, and process intimacy. For men especially, this rhythm is often quieter, slower, and less outwardly expressive than many women expect. After sex, while some women may naturally desire immediate closeness through words or gestures, many men shift into a more internal space. It's not because they don't care or aren't emotionally affected by the experience, but because their emotional wiring often leads them to process the moment in stillness rather than outward conversation. Respecting this rhythm is one of the most overlooked yet powerful ways to create emotional safety in a relationship. There's a common misunderstanding that if a man doesn't want to talk right after sex or becomes quiet, he is being emotionally distant or uninterested. But for many men, that silence isn't a withdrawal. It's a form of integration. It's their way of absorbing the emotional weight of the experience, of grounding themselves after a moment of deep vulnerability. When a woman misreads this and tries to force immediate connection or becomes anxious in the silence, it can cause a man to feel misunderstood or even pressured. He may begin to associate post-sex moments with emotional discomfort rather than emotional nourishment. On the other hand, when a woman can sit in that quiet with patience and presence without needing to fill the space or seek reassurance, it communicates a profound level of emotional intelligence. It says, "I trust you enough to let you be." That kind of acceptance gives a man room to stay emotionally engaged without feeling like he has to perform or explain. It gives him the space to return in his own time, often more emotionally available because he didn't feel judged or rushed. Respecting a man's emotional rhythm also means recognizing that his timing for connection might not always align perfectly with his partner's. He may want to talk or reconnect later, after he's had time to settle into the emotional aftermath of intimacy. When a woman leaves that door open, she creates a sense of freedom within the relationship that doesn't come from emotional detachment, but from emotional respect. This is what makes a man feel not just tolerated in his differences, but deeply valued. Men are often navigating internal conflicts they don't voice. They may feel an urge to stay close, but fear appearing too dependent. They may want reassurance, but struggle to ask for it. By allowing them space to regulate on their terms without pressure or assumptions, a woman helps dismantle those internal barriers. This fosters an environment where emotional closeness can flourish, not as a demand, but as a natural response to feeling safe. When a man's emotional rhythm is respected, it builds a quiet confidence in the relationship. He no longer feels the need to protect himself as much because he knows he's not being rushed to meet a standard that doesn't align with how he processes connection. That level of understanding becomes a rare kind of emotional refuge, one that most men spend their lives hoping to find.